That's not how we usually hear how the resurrection goes, is it? And it's kind of a bummer ending to Mark's gospel. The women heard that Jesus was risen, and they did nothing about it. Wait, what? That can't be right. In Matthew's gospel, they go and they tell Peter, and Peter runs and they do stuff. In Luke's gospel, they do stuff. In John's gospel, they do stuff. In Mark's gospel, they don't. It's weird. And it's probably why, as you might have noted when the last little bit of the gospel was up there, they tagged on this little earliest manuscripts don't have verses 9 through 20. Because people didn't like that Mark's gospel ended the way it did. It made them uncomfortable, just like it still kind of makes us uncomfortable today. And so they took a bunch of things from other places, stirred it all up together, and you get the end of Mark's gospel that isn't actually the end of Mark's gospel. If you really want to get official, the ending of Mark's gospel is even worse, because the last 4 words aren't because they were afraid, it was they were afraid because. And yes, it's just as bad grammar in Greek as it is in English. It just stops. And as far as the reader is left to understand, he is risen, but nobody knows about it. Now, we'll come back to that in a second, but it's been a bit of an interesting week for us, hasn't it? Jesus has gone from being welcomed into Jerusalem as a celebrity. He came in on Palm Sunday riding a donkey, all the people waving palm branches saying, "Hosanna to the Son of David." Then on Monday, he went into the temple and did everything he could to make the people in power mad at him. They came in and he sees all the money changers and the sellers and all this stuff going on in the house of God. So Jesus drives them all out. Now, when I'm going to get hit by someone, there's probably 3 places I really don't like getting hit. I don't like getting hit in the stomach. That's unpleasant. I don't like getting hit in the face because I'm too pretty for that. And I really don't like getting hit in the wallet. And when Jesus cleared all these people out of the temple, he hit the leaders of the people right in the wallet. So already they're not too happy with him. Then in the days that he starts teaching in Jerusalem, he teaches a lot of things that make them mad. And he also gets out of all the little ways they're trying to figure out how to trap him. And it doesn't go very well for the leaders of the people, and they get madder and madder and madder until finally they catch a break. Because one of Jesus' closest friends shows up on their doorstep one day and says, "Hey, this Jesus guy, I know you want to get him. I can get him for you." And Judas betrays Jesus right after the Last Supper, where Jesus does some pretty weird things at a Passover meal. He takes a piece of bread and says, "This bread is my body. Remember me when you eat it." And then he takes a cup of wine and says, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Remember me when you drink it." Then Jesus goes out to a garden to pray. That's where Judas ends up meeting him with armed guards. Jesus is arrested. He goes through what can generously be called a sham trial. And finally, on Friday, is executed. By Friday afternoon, he is dead and buried. And as far as the disciples were concerned, that was it. They spent all day Saturday wondering what was next. Were the guards going to come for them? And when you really think about it, Jesus had gotten out of a whole lot of trouble before. Jesus had no problem getting away from a crowd that was trying to stone him. He just poof and was gone, as far as the gospel tells it. He snuck right away from that. He always got out of the religious leaders' traps as they were trying to get him to say something that would give them justification to arrest him. And yet, when he goes to die, he doesn't get out of that one. So the disciples are confused because in every good story, the main character is kind of safe, right? I mean, unless you're watching Game of Thrones, the main character is safe. You can pretty much assume that if you're watching Star Trek, for example, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy are safe. Now, of course, if any of you have ever seen Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, which happens to be the best of the Star Trek films, it caused Star Trek fans a lot of anguish. Because in that movie, at the end, Mr. Spock sacrifices himself to save the Enterprise. Where did they steal that storyline from? Especially because in Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, which is probably right there among the worst of these Star Trek films, through some space magic, Spock comes back. Starting to figure out who they stole this story from now. So the women, back in Jesus' time, are going to the tomb. As far as they're concerned, they're just going to see Jesus' body. All they want to do is anoint it with spices, make sure that the Jewish burial customs are followed. And then as they're walking around, and I love this, I love that this happens. They're walking around, they're going to the tomb, and they're on the road, and they're, wait a minute. How are we going to get in? There's a big heavy stone in front of the tomb. This could be a problem. They don't actually address how they're going to solve this. They're just like, oh, this could be bad. But then you can imagine they're coming up on the tomb and they're looking at it from a distance and they see that something doesn't quite look right. They see that there's a hole where a hole shouldn't be because the stone had already been moved. And they get closer to the tomb and poke their heads inside, and there's a guy in white sitting on the right side of the tomb. And he says, "You guys looking for Jesus?" He's not here. We can see that. He is risen. And he is going ahead of you into Galilee. So go and tell the disciples, even Peter, you remember Peter, loudmouth, was the strongest protester that he would never betray Jesus. And what did he go and do? Denied him 3 times. Go tell the disciples, even Peter, that he will meet them in Galilee. Now, in the other Gospels, that's exactly what they do. In this Gospel, they say nothing to anyone because they're terrified. They're terrified of what this news might mean, so they keep their mouths shut. Now, it's interesting in Mark's Gospel. There's a running theme throughout the whole of Mark's Gospel that you may have noticed. Whenever Jesus heals someone, with rare exceptions, he tells them to say nothing about who he is and what he did. When he healed someone who couldn't walk, he told them, don't tell anybody about this. And he does this over and over again. Whenever he does a healing, unless he's in a Gentile area and he doesn't have to worry about it, he always says, don't tell anyone. Now, of course, what did the people do? they run out and tell everyone they know because they're so excited about being healed. So throughout the gospel, this is the running theme. Whenever Jesus says not to say anything, people do. So when you get to these women who are told specifically, go and tell the disciples and Peter, you would think that they would be excited. Finally, we get to tell people something about Jesus. But no, they don't. They say nothing to anyone. This ending of Mark's gospel, I think, is supposed to make us feel uncomfortable. Because here we are, Easter Sunday, it's easy for us to say right here in this place that he is risen. He is risen. Will you be so passionate if I see you in the grocery store? Will you be so passionate if I run into you at Burt's? Will you be so passionate if you meet someone at Walmart? We often get scared about the resurrection. We get scared when we want to talk about it. Just like the women at the tomb. This Easter, I think Mark's gospel asks us the question. We get to this point and it asks us, what will you do? Now that you have heard the things that Jesus has taught, now that you've heard of the death he died, and now that you have heard of the resurrection that he now lives again, what will you do? Will you shout out loud that he is risen? He is risen indeed. Or will you say nothing to anyone?